Hi there, I'm Ned Bowman. The chosen thematic area of this unit that I am exploring is country and story, and the point that I'm trying to make in this vlog is that the inclusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' connections to country and story should be a primary focus within every classroom. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a strong connection to country. They connect to the land and the sea, to the waterways and the skies where they or their family comes from. This is a powerful link, and it intrinsically shapes and defines all Australian First Peoples culture. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, the land in which they come from is an extension of themselves. They are part of it, just as the hills, rivers, and native animals and plants are part of it. Everything within their country is connected. As Quamelina and Quamelina state, within an Aboriginal worldview, nothing exists in isolation. All life exists in relationship to everything else. Many Australian First People identify with their country so intimately that rather than calling themselves Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, they prefer to refer to themselves as coming from a particular country, such as the Dirrumbal people of my hometown, Rockhampton in central Queensland, or the Yugera or Turrbal people of southern Queensland, here in Brisbane. Torres Strait Islander people use a similar system, using the name of their island to identify themselves. This level of connection to country and story is part of who they are. Their concept of identity and kinship is governed by this deeply spiritual connection to country. In Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, the idea of kinship is broken down into a series of levels. The first being the concept of moiety. Moiety means half. In moieties, everything, including people and the environment, is split into two halves. Each half is a mirror of the other, representing land, air, water, and other geographical features. To understand this universe, these two images must come together. Children will inherit either their mother or their father's moiety, and you can only ever marry someone with a different moiety, ensuring that you keep a complete connection. They also have totems, which are particular animals, plants, or parts of the landscape from their country. Each family group and often each person within that group has their own totem, and this gives a person a special connection to the animal or plant or object, and they're ensured to make sure that these are protected in the environment. If a person's totem is a plant, then they are not permitted to eat that plant or harm it in any way. And these totems govern the special relationships and help Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people understand their kinship with others and understand the laws that they must follow. I'm bringing this up because, to me, this shows how integral this connection between country and story is. It is very clearly a part of their identity, and it is this connection that seemingly informs every other aspect of their being. Even the 8 Ways of Learning framework, which is a framework that has been endorsed countrywide, was created using these ties to country and story. If you actually look at the framework itself and the report that and was made under, the whole report is told and can be viewed as a story. The introduction of the paper talks about how a story takes you up and then down, leaving you in a place that is higher than before. It imagines itself as a narrative, symbolizing itself as a river, running through everything in land, body, mind, and spirit, and tying together the shape of learning for all peoples. It even has a map joining the formation of the project with the location of a local river junction between Burke and Brewarrina, where 3 rivers meet to become one. This river gave the shape for a map of the project and acts as a way to bring together the ways of learning from different cultures and find what they had in common, then follow those common ways. The interface between 3 Aboriginal and Western learning frameworks was found, and the 8 Ways of Learning were born from that, carrying the best of both worlds down the river. The point here I am making is that as a future teacher, the emphasis I am putting on this theme of country and story is coming from the ideal of creating an inclusive and meaningful learning environment for all of my students. This connection to country and story acts as the foundation for implementing authentic Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learning, and I believe that emphasizing this theme within the classroom is hugely beneficial for two reasons. The first reason is for the development and growth of my students. In understanding this powerful connection to country and story, I have the ability to look after, properly respect, and ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students within my class are being properly supported and that they have an identity that they can be proud of. Exploring the theme of country and story through exploring the theme of country and story within the classroom not only supports the learning of all of my students, giving them the ability to more deeply make connections between the strategies of the 8 ways of learning framework, but it also helps foster a sense of identity and well-being for any First Australians within my classroom. Kingsley and Townsend discuss how Indigenous people hold a deep connection to their ancestral landscapes and that it's central to their wellness. This connection to country is vital to Aboriginal people's existence and reflects the notion of an innate connection to land. This connection from this land compromises cultural connections and causes extreme distress and powerlessness, commonly felt by many Indigenous groups worldwide. And just as a lack of control, stress and social gradient have been shown to affect people's health outcomes across all population groups. This disconnect from country contributes to an extra layer of distress and inequality. There was a YouTube link early on in this course that showed a short clip of Stan Grant participating in a racism debate, and he made a statement that really stuck with me, which was, "An Indigenous child is more likely to be locked up in prison than to finish high school." And this is something that I really want to avoid in my classroom. And if I can use the 8 ways of learning in an authentic manner and holistically explore and promote these spiritual connections to country and story within the classroom, it is my hope that all of my students are going to be better off for it. The second reason that this theme is relevant to me as a teacher is through the emphasis that the Australian curriculum and government legislation puts upon incorporating Indigenous culture within education and upon closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians in all fields. Authentically incorporating Indigenous culture within the classroom is an effective way of closing the gap, and that's one of the reasons it's a focus within the Australian curriculum. Kingsley and Townsend also point out that a lot of these issues surrounding this gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people stem from academics and governments struggling to describe Aboriginal views of well-being, reducing it to a mix of standard socioeconomic indicators and biomedical measures, rather than the complex Aboriginal concepts, which include issues like kinship, which, as I explained earlier, is intrinsically linked to country and story, and their connection to country and the like. If everyone is able to better understand the intimate connection of story and country to First Australians, we are all going to be better off for it. A deeper knowledge will lead to a deeper experience, a deeper level of understanding, of compassion, of empathy, of connection. And if young people are exposed to these learnings early on, not only do they have more respect for our multicultural nation and society, but it's more likely that they'll start fostering an appreciation themselves of country and story. There are so many ways that we can do this too. So utilizing and having access to the 8 ways of learning within my classroom is an authentic way of doing that. But to explore the theme of country and story further, there are a variety of ways in which I can achieve that. Indigenous literature is a fantastic way to incorporate and explore this theme within the classroom. And I've come across a beautiful little book called My Place by Nadia Wheatley and Donna Rawlins. It's this picture book which takes the reader back into the past and depicts the history of a piece of land in Sydney from 1788 to 1988 through the stories of the various children who have lived there. It aims to teach the reader about the history of Australia, about families, settlers, multiculturalism, and the traditional owners of the land. And each child's story within this book is displayed over a decade in time, showing their particular dress, customs, and family life, and features these beautiful hand-drawn maps that the successive generations of children have drawn, which demonstrate the things that have changed, like the landscape and the wildlife, as well as the things that have remained constant. Exploring this theme of country and story further, I could have students in pairs track the ideas within this book of the characters and animals and plants in each decade via a table, ensuring that they can also make and draw connections with how the natural landscape has been altered over time. I could use this book to explore our concept of place, using that word as a focus point of a yarning circle where we can share ideas and concepts of our connections with the world and what it means to us. I could take this a step further, looking at local Dreamtime stories and mapping out the events of the stories across a geological map of the area. The Museum of Brisbane held a Dreamtime story sharing exhibition where Aboriginal performers gave an insight into the Turrbal and Yagara people and their dreaming through dance and performance. Exhibitions like this would also be a fantastic way to discover more about the connection of country and story in an authentic manner. Having this connection to country and story as an emphasis within the classroom provides all students with a foundation to engage with Indigenous learning strategies, such as the 8 ways of learning, and also ensures that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people retain a connection to their culture. It opens up future learning experiences through parent and community engagement, through through excursions or visits from community elders, and it acts as the foundational understanding for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's learning. This is why I believe it is relevant to me as a teacher. Thank you.